We're rolling.
Welcome to the House Dudes podcast, where we invite you to follow us on our journey towards financial freedom using the power of real estate. I'm Jack Haas.
And I'm Josh Koth. Here at House Dudes, we believe in a couple key principles. Number one, the best way to retain information is by teaching it to others. And number two, a rising tide lifts all boats. We're not competitors, we're a community. So let's get into some real estate investing.
So this week, I'm going to ask you to head over to housedudespodcast.com and look at the visual aid that Josh put together as he's conceptualized what we're going to talk about today. But we're going to be talking about the buying scale.
Try not to be too impressed with my graphic design abilities. I know you're going to be jealous.
It is pretty.
It's there's a lot of colors. And basically, what the buying scale is I needed a way to get across to people from 100% to 0% where they should purchase their properties as a percentage of ARV. So 100 being the most you would ever pay for a property. This is full retail price all the way down to 0%. So that's kind of, and then depending on your exit strategy, where do you fall in this percentage range? Where should you fall depending on your exit strategy? So I wanted to visualize that because I find that people get confused depending on if they're going to be a flipper, a landlord, a wholesaler, or even to live in a property, where they need to be on this scale. And the questions that they are asking us kind of indicate that they aren't sure how to source properties and what they should be paying. So we wanted to kind of talk about how to simplify that and visualize it. So,
I think what I'm going to interrupt you because I think this is really important because, like you said, we get a lot of people that ask you these. We get a lot of questions around this, but having a good understanding of how this kind of lays out will really impact not only your marketing, but how you approach and talk to motivated sellers.
Right. So let's just talk about what the buying scale is. So it's 100% down to 0%. So we're going to talk about each band I have in this example here and work our way down. And so let's just start with 100 to 95% I call owner occupants. So that's somebody that's willing to live in the property. They're paying basically 100% of full MLS retail price. So that's kind of sets our benchmark at the top end there. And when you're not trying to make a profit off a property, you can afford to pay 100% of retail price. There's nothing wrong with that. We do it all the time for our own properties to live in. And, you got to live somewhere. And if it works for your family, that's fine. So you can pay pretty much 100% full retail price based on the comps in the neighborhood.
The next band would be the 80 to 90% buy and hold landlords.
So this is basically, just under where owner occupants are, but you can still be a profitable landlord. Obviously, this is market specific. The rents have to support this, but at least in the Midwest, and we found in our particular area of the upper Midwest, you can pay 80 to 90% of retail price and still cash flow if you do things correctly. So don't, as a land, if buy and hold is your ultimate goal, you can creep up closer to the full MLS retail price within 80 to 90%, I would say.
Yeah, and that's probably a good point, is that don't discredit the MLS, because if you're strictly buy and hold, there's deals to be had because you're actually not that far away from what they might be asking for.
Exactly. So let's go one notch below that. So the next band is 50 to 80%, and that would be flippers. So that's people that are putting a pretty significant chunk of money into rehabbing the property. There's a lot of holding costs involved, carrying costs. It might take 6 to 9 months before you're selling the property. So those costs go up. So as your costs of your strategy go up, obviously the number that you have to buy it at drops. So 50 to 80% is where we have flippers. Obviously, that's a big range depending on the amount of rehab the property needs and your local market conditions. And these are all just kind of rules of thumb.
Yeah, I think that's usually what surprises most people, is that how much of a discount you have to be falling in, especially when you are dealing with flips.
Yeah, and we've had, this chart kind of sparked from conversations from newer investors, and sometimes you'd have people interested in flipping would come up and say, well, I could probably sell it for 200 when it's done, so I could buy it for 180 and make 20,000. Well, they just have no concept of how low you need to purchase this property in order to actually make a profit, because they're not considering all the other costs. They're just they don't even consider their profit built in, all the carrying costs, the extent of rehab, and all the unknowns involved, and the risk you're taking as a flipper. So really 50 to 80% is kind of our rule of thumb as a flipper.
So I think what is even more startling for some is that if you're getting into wholesaling, you're basically trying to prop up those flippers, those buy and holds, and some of those owner occupants. So you're looking at properties and trying to get them under contract at 40 to 70% of ARV.
Yeah, exactly. And that can be scary. Another thing we see is a lot of people come up and say, I'm a wholesaler. I'm just starting wholesaling. I don't know if they have a concept of how deeply discounted they need to be able to purchase these properties, because if you're wholesaling, you're tacking a fee on top of that. There has to be enough profit left for who's ever up the chain purchasing that property from you. And that's tough to do.
Right. So let's talk about like those people who can actually buy it for less than the 40% ARV.
Simple answer. They're called winners. Yeah, obviously, if you're owner occupant and you can buy for 30% of ARV, you're a winner, right? I mean, you just made an amazing deal. So, the higher up you are on the scale, and if you're able to buy at a lower band, you're just going to make that much more profit. So I would encourage you to do that. We're really kind of setting the upper limits here of what you should be shooting for to make sure you stay under. Because what I don't want is somebody who's a wholesaler buying at landlord price and then trying to wholesale that property. They're just going to set themselves up for failure. So another reason I made this chart was you have to think about the flow of a deal and who can sell to whom. Like my proper grammar there.
Yeah, that's really, really impressive.
So really, the people on the lower bands of the buying scale can sell to the people on the upper bands, but it doesn't work the other way. So as an example, as a wholesaler, you can sell to a flipper, a landlord, or an owner occupant. You have 3 potential exits. As a flipper, you can pretty much sell to a landlord or an owner occupant. As a landlord, if you buy at the landlord 80 to 90% of ARV, you can pretty much either put a tenant in there or you can sell to an owner occupant. Your exits are kind of limited the higher you purchase on the buying scale. So that's really the importance of it, is understanding where you fit with your desired exit strategy. And based on that, how are you going to pursue that? What's the best use of your resources? As an example, if you're a flipper, all you want to do is rehab properties and sell them to owner occupants. You probably don't want to waste a bunch of money marketing, trying to do what a wholesaler does, which is find properties directly from sellers. The best use of your time is probably just getting a bunch of wholesalers' cash buyer lists and select a property when one of those becomes available, purchase it, do your flip, and on to the next one. Because it takes a whole different skill set and amount of marketing dollars and everything else to be a wholesaler. And as an example, if you want to be a wholesaler, then you really need to be developing that skill set of negotiating and finding off-market direct from seller properties. And if you don't have the resources or the time to do that, it's probably not going to be a successful strategy.
Yeah, I think another thing that's a misconception is, especially when it comes to wholesaling, is when you're trying to find those properties at such a big discount, the volume or quantity of people you need to reach out to and be talking to. Yeah. I get a lot of, we get a lot of first-time investors who are getting into wholesaling, and they think they can get something under contract after 1 or 2 visits. They don't realize that they almost have to be looking at and talking to 30, 40, even 50 people to find that one opportunity.
Or worse, they'll say, they're looking on the MLS for deals to wholesale. That may work in markets. It definitely is very tough, though. Looking on the MLS where everyone else can see those same properties versus you talking directly to sellers. If I was a wholesaler that had no funds for marketing, I mean, you can just start door knocking or, writing down addresses of kind of disheveled looking properties and pursuing them that way. Make your own bandit signs, those types of kind of guerrilla marketing techniques. But really, you need to do whatever you have to get in front of sellers, motivated sellers to lock up the properties, basically across from the kitchen table from them.
So maybe we need to do that. Like we worked our way down your scale. Mm-hmm. Now we need to work our way up and talking about where each of these groups are going to find their best resources, or how they're going to find these opportunities.
Yeah, really, basically, if wherever you fall on the scale, you need to look to the people below you. That's where you're going to source your properties. An owner-occupant could purchase from a landlord, from a flipper, or from a wholesaler. A landlord could purchase from a flipper or a wholesaler, and a flipper could purchase from a wholesaler, and wholesalers pretty much have to purchase directly from homeowners, motivated sellers. That's kind of how it works. And the lower you are on the scale, the more options you have too. Then you can sell to anyone above you. So that's really the purpose of this chart, is to understand kind of where you fit, and to say it's okay to pay a wholesaler a fee because they spent a lot of money and resources and time to find that deeply discounted property. They stick their fee on there, and you still have enough room to make some money too. And you didn't have to go talk to 200 people to find the property. You just had to look at an email list and basically pick one.
And I think that's probably another episode, is it's time for people to get out of the mindset of what a wholesaler has the right to earn, because I think that might be a mental hurdle for some.
Yeah. Yeah, so if you understand where you fit on the buying scale, remember, if you're a flipper or a landlord and you could buy at 80 to 90% and the wholesaler's buying at 40 to 70, well, that spread between your band and the wholesaler's band, that's where they make their profit. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with that. If the deal works for you, that should be just fine. And, I don't care. Like, if we purchase a property from someone else, I don't care what they paid for it. If they paid $1 for it, I say good for them.
Yeah. So make sure the numbers work for you. And if it's a good deal, it's a good deal, no matter its source. We've put a lot of effort into providing useful content, and if you found value in the show and have any interest in supporting us with a small donation, head over to patreon.com/housedudes.
And if you have any thoughts or questions, shoot us an email at info@housedudes.com. You can also find us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter @housedudes. And if you like what you're hearing, head over to iTunes, subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It really helps other investors out there find the show.
And remember, massive positive impact requires
massive positive action. We'll see you next time. This episode was brought to you by HouseDudes.com. Do you live in a good cash flowing market? If so, turnkey isn't the best choice for you. You should buy in your market. If you don't live in a great market for investors, where can you find profitable cash flowing properties? We love the Midwest, where prices are reasonable and the people are great. We personally invest here and have lived in the area all of our lives. So how does turnkey work? We find the property, we rehab the property, and we find you a tenant and place you under the care of our local property manager, who we trust with all our own investment properties. I'm sure you have questions about how the process works and what to do next. If that's the case, fill out the contact form on housedudes.com, and we'll reach out to see if you are a good fit for our business. We have a limited supply of properties every month, so we can only sell to a select few qualified buyers. We'll see you on housedudes.com.
I don't like to tell a man what to do with his money, but if you ain't investing in property, then you're dumber than a dummy.
I'm not dumb. I'm smart.
Well, buy property. That's my advice.